So I'll go ahead and start out then. Welcome everyone to the call. We wanted to have this call after USHA for any kind of questions or to talk about some of the new directions and priorities that heard some discussion on last month at USHA and also the month before at the NIAA meeting. You'll see some of these slides are the same slides that Mr. Ibaugh or Dr. Scheer had presented at those meetings, and we can talk about those or answer questions as we go forward. I wanted to just quickly go over some of the new directions. Mr. Ibaugh has identified 4 priority goals for us, and the root of those comes from listening sessions that we had a year ago from a state and federal working group of folks that got together to distill what we had heard in some of those public sessions, what we had heard from you all from other meetings with our state and other stakeholders, and distill those down into these 4 goals. These goals are, the first of these is data sharing and partnerships. When we talk about data sharing, we always get hung up on, with stakeholders, on sharing private information and things that things that they envision, their black helicopters and scary things, and we're not talking about that. We're talking about some very limited data to share with the AHR data system that would allow all of us, the states or federal people, to look up traceability information and then go to the source of that. Second priority is electronic ID. I think we recognize that's going to be a critical component in moving forward with traceability. The third is birth to slaughter tracing, and the fourth is use of electronic CVIs. So next slide, Daisy.
That sounds like a real interesting webinar.
All about ADT.
It is interesting, guys. Could you put yourselves on mute?
Yeah, we're living the life right here, don't you tell you.
All right, thanks. So the strategy for this, there's a lot of different pieces and moving parts to go into these 4 goals, and we're doing a lot of work on those. A lot of work on.
Yeah, just a few.
A lot of work on developing our IT infrastructure. We've invested quite a lot this fiscal year in modernizing our IT systems.
Dr. Scott, if
yes.
I could interrupt you for just a second. It seems that we're still getting some background noise. Let me try to mute the lines again. Just a moment.
Okay. Go ahead.
Dr. Stott, if you can hear me, you may need to do *6 again.
Okay, I think I'm back to go, and it sounds quiet now.
All right, thank you.
So this multi-part strategy involves the data integration, the USHA group that was working on data standards as well. Any assistance? Thanks. The standards on not only data ICVIs that the USHA group worked on, but also tag standards and other standardization of data and devices. We are looking at the way that we bring official tags onto the market. We're looking to hopefully simplify some of the processes for getting PIN numbers. We are doing a lot of work on retiring tags. No regulations are on the book right now although some things may require regulation changes in the future to implement them. Next slide, Daisy. So this is the first priority on data sharing that I was talking about. If you're not familiar with the Animal Health Event Repository, you should be. It right now is linked to most of our federal databases that are involved in traceability. It doesn't hold a lot of data elements, but it holds the data that you would need to look up the location for other data. So it has a tag number, a date, an event, which might be a health certificate or a TB test or something like that. It has a PIN number, but that PIN number may be pretty generic. It may be the PIN for a state, and then the state manages the tags from there on. It has, of course, the state location, and it has the data system that holds the data. This database is now connected to our federal databases, but has the capability to link these pieces of data to any other data system that might be used for traceability. So those would be state or private data systems as well. The idea or the philosophy here is that we're very concerned about data confidentiality, but we also need to look up information quickly. So if we can do that electronically and then couple that with the old-fashioned way of having a partner who owns the remainder of the data, then we can do traces really quickly, no matter where the rest of the information resides. Next slide, please. So the second priority that Mr. Ibaugh has emphasized is the use of electronic ID, and I think we've heard very clearly from most of you folks, from our stakeholders, from our accredited veterinarians, that the only way that we can really efficiently have traceability is electronic. And certainly that comes with caveats and issues and costs and so forth to do that. But to get to that goal, one of the first things is to phase out the free visual ID tags that Veterinary Services provides to the states. If you stop and think a little bit about the rationale of telling folks that we really, really support electronic ID, but oh, by the way, here are some free metal tags, that doesn't really track. Moving forward with phasing out the visual tags, the first step would be to eliminate or not provide the free tags that we do now. Down the road, those would probably be phased out completely, but the initial step would just be the free ones that we provide. As that happens, though, the concern is that if we phased out free visual tags, they're still on the market for a few cents, for 8 or 9 cents a tag. So we wouldn't gain anything at all by phasing out the free tags unless we had some incentive to move to electronic ID. So we've proposed sharing costs. This proposal at this time is just a proposal. It's not funding or approved. But the proposal would be that based on that we all move together forward or we don't move forward at all, the cost sharing would be divided between USDA and states and producers. It would bring the cost of electronic ID tags down to a pretty low level, and it would provide some incentive and help in that transition from the metal tags to electronic tags. We don't have details for that yet. We're working on it within Veterinary Services, and we are going to be reaching out to our state colleagues in the very near future for some volunteers to help us figure out how we might make this work successfully for everyone. and then we'll also bring in some of the tag companies as well as we go forward. We'd also like to improve simplify the acquisition of tags, and part of that involves getting PIN numbers that are required for official tags, and then we would increase our focus on funding on electronic ID and records for the states through the cooperative agreements. Next, please, Stacy. So this is a third priority, is to be able to track animals from birth to slaughter, at least at both ends and events in the middle. For tracking back to birth herds within APHIS, we don't have the authority to trace them, so that kind of tracing would have to come through either industry, states, or some future rulemaking that would be involved to do that. At slaughter, we have been working with some of the slaughter plants to provide them reader hardware in exchange for sharing with us essentially the tag number and the date that the animal was slaughtered. To date, we have 6 plants that have confirmed that they're willing to share those data, and we have 3 more that have at least said they're interested and willing, but haven't signed any agreements yet. And we also have some of our brucellosis testing data. In addition to those, we have implemented the processes to retire tags that have been backlogged in our brucellosis testing in our MEM repository, and those amount to about 4 million tags now. When those slaughter plants that have agreed so far come online, those will cover roughly a quarter of the cattle population that's covered by the traceability rule. So not quite where we need to be yet, but making some pretty rapid progress forward. Next, please, Daisy. Premises registrations, I alluded to that a little bit and tell you just a couple of things that we have on the table. One of them is registering premises, and different states have different mechanisms for registering prims. Some are very easy to use and direct, and some are not quite as easily done. Some are online, some are by telephone. What we would like to do is to identify each state's mechanism for registering premises and then post a link to the states on our APHIS website, so that when producers or anyone else would do a search for premises registration, they could not only have whatever links that are available for the states, but would also have this sort of map that would allow them to link directly back to the states. And so we would hope that that will help not only the states, but producers get prim registrations. Next, Daisy. For the prim registration, the critical point there is that it's a geographic location. It's not a person or a business. That when you register a premises, it's an actual premises, and it's associated with a 911 address or geo coordinates. Next one. So when prims are updated, it's pretty important that the prim not be updated in a local database, but not updated in the central allocator database. So they should be updated if the original address is not a geographic location. In some of the earlier, older ones, there are some rural routes or some other addresses that are not 911 addresses. If there's some sort of issue with the address or a problem with it that doesn't allow it to be related to a physical location of a prim. So those should be updated. They can be updated through our ADT help desk, and they can update it in the National PREM repository. Next one, Daisy. And then the PIN addresses are not updated if a producer moves to a new location. They don't. The PIN doesn't go with them. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say. I'd like to pass it. Next slide. I think the next slide comes up for trace performance metrics, and I'd like Alex, if you're on, Alex, to go over some of the trace performance metrics and some of the progress and some of the new thoughts that you're having on doing measuring our traceability system. So I'll pass it to you, Alex.
Thanks, Aaron. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about where we are on the trace performance measures and the national priority traces. So the trace performance measure 4th year comparison report was sent out to the group earlier this month, so you should have all received that. This chart here in the report summarizes what we found in the 4th year compared to the 3 preceding years, as well as compared to the initial baseline values that were established in 2009 through 2011. So if you look at the far right column, the 4th year comparison column, you see that the percent of successfully completed TPM improved for all 4 measures. So if you look at the percent success, you'll see that TPM 1, that number is up to 99%. For TPM 2 and 3 up to 97, and for TPM 4 up to 98% successfully completed. And then in the column just to the right of that, for the amount of time it took to complete each of the 4 measures, also called the elapsed time, we also saw improvement. We see that for TPM 1, that time is down to 15 hours, for TPM 2 down to 25, for TPM 3, 30 hours, and for TPM 4, 22 hours. So we saw some really nice improvement there. The last 2 comparison years, the 3rd and 4th year, did include also an outliers column, which excludes data for TPMs that were more than 3 standard deviations from the average of all cooperators. So you can see how those numbers are further reduced there as well. Next slide, please. So here we see again, kind of in a different form. This is also out of the comparison report. So the total elapsed time to conduct TPM 2, 3, and 4 combined for all states is also shown here from baseline through year 4. And so you can see there was a steady downward trend that is apparent in each of the 4 years following implementation of the rule. Next slide, please. So I'd like to just talk here just a little bit about national priority traces. So you probably are all aware we are administering the national priority traces, or NPTs, as part of the current cooperative agreement period. And many of you may have already participated in one. To date, we have successfully completed 41 NPTs, so we're happy with how they are going. We have a goal of completing approximately 150 by the end of the cooperative agreement period. So that's what we're looking at there. So, you know, going forward, for instance, the FY 2018 comparison report, the idea is that we're going to list separate TPM values for test exercises, national priority traces, and actual traces. And so the intent, really, of the analysis is to help us determine when we can transition to fewer TPM exercises. So, you know, the idea here is to transition away from TPMs to NPTs, and to also look at ways to adapt those NPTs going forward so that we can start looking at some additional metrics. and the kind of the bullet points on the lower part of this slide are what I'm going to be talking about now. And what those are is just some of the things that we're looking at for the MPTs going forward. So some things would be the same and some would be different. So for instance, we would be using the same 4 questions as the TPMs currently, and that's what we're currently doing for the NPTs. We would continue to be looking at elapsed time and percent successfully completed. So those things would be the same, but we're looking at, you know, some things that would be different. And one of the things we're looking at is the ID. So we're looking at perhaps using any type of ID, so unofficial ID. So for instance, we might pull a back tag number or a producer tag number or a brand, or maybe even an animal that doesn't have an ID, kind of the real life situations that we encounter, as well as looking at animals of any age or use. So those are some things that we're looking at. And then the next 2 points really speak to the fact that to date, you know, we've not been great at capturing how much tracing actually costs. So we are looking at ways going forward to do that, ways that are going to be more effective in doing that, and, you know, also considering about how to incorporate that as part of the cooperative agreement reporting as well. So, you know, I'd say that really the big picture here is we're looking at a way to continue to measure the progress that we've achieved, but also we want to look at ways to enable us to find the remaining gaps, to find those holes in our current tracing capabilities, you know, that are not currently covered by ADT. And so we just wanted to give everyone, you know, a heads up on the direction that we're thinking about, so people can start thinking about it themselves, and, you know, we can kind of continue that discussion as we go forward. So I think that's all the comments I have for today. And at this point, I believe I would turn it over to Randy for the IT update.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Hope you can hear me.
Yep, I sure can.
Perfect. Good morning or afternoon. I just want to give you a brief update on kind of the 3 IT projects that are pretty much directly related to ADT, and that would be the MIM modernization project, what's now being called the ADTIS modernization, which started out as just the AIMS refactor to change the base code, but we're now moving that to a full modernization, and the VSPS bug fixes and enhancements, some of which were discussed and identified in a resolution at USAHA. So for MIM modernization, I know we've talked about this several times over the last probably year and a half, but we did have the contractor began working on the project as of October 1st. And so they've broken the project down into 3 phases. The first phase, which will be replacing the current MIM repository with a enhanced kind of MIM messaging service that will actually be an interoperability service so that we can connect and move data between federal and state databases, possibly even third-party databases, and even the possibility of moving between state-to-state databases, not giving something to the feds per se, or Fed-to-Fed database. So a pretty robust messaging service that we believe would solve most of the requests for interoperability between federal, state, and like I said, some third-party systems. The contractors are going to work probably about the first year on just building that messaging service. And if time permits in that year, then they will move on to looking at enhancing what is currently the MIM manager, so the desktop piece, which part of this modernization will move that from a strictly desktop application and move it to the web. That way, state and federal animal health officials, accredited veterinarians can all log into a website and do the same type of work, upload files, submit records, whatever it might be, right from the web without having to install an application on your device and keeping that up. The plan for that component is to also make it available offline. So even though it's through your web browser, there's technology available that would allow you to still access and use the application when you did not have an internet connection. So again, thinking that this would make it very, very useful if you had a mobile computer and you wanted to go out and take that into the field and you did not have internet connectivity, you could still use that same application possibly in the field. And then as we move past that, then we'll move and update the mobile piece, the PDA application, so exists today, to move that over to where it would operate on iPhone, tablet, whatever, Android phone, whatever it might be, whatever the current operating systems or mobile systems are when we get to that point. But definitely want to make it available to any mobile device running a modern operating system. So for the ADT-IS modernization, that was scheduled to start in fiscal year 18, but just because of scheduling conflicts with getting contracts out, that it's gotten pushed back into fiscal year 19. The latest word I have as of this morning is it looks like the earliest this contract will go out will be sometime in January. So we're getting pushed back already into the second quarter. When this contract does go out, we will only be gathering requirements, documenting the existing applications and infrastructure and how the back end is put together, and then coming up with solutions and proposals to move into a second contract that would have to do the development. So this first contract is strictly looking at where we are today, how we need to move forward to modernize everything in ADT-IS, knowing that we're going to be moving forward with electronic ID and having a much larger demand on the system. So looking at all those components. And then finally for the VSPS, again, we have a contract that's in place that started October 1st, and that's to make bug fixes and enhancements. Over the last several months, there's been a group of us that have been working, trying to prioritize and look at all the different bugs that have been reported over the last 5 to 7 years probably for VSPS. And again, looking at the enhancements and all the requests and how people need the system enhanced to do more than what it was designed to do at the time it was built back in 2010, I believe. So we have those listed as the priorities listed out, both as bugs and then enhancements, and we'll be working with the contractor as to how we're going to approach those. Initially, we're not aware of the number of developers that we would have available to us and thinking we may only get one, but it looks like we'll at least have 2, possibly more developers. So we may be able to attack bug fixes and enhancements simultaneously. Just put the 2 different developers working in different areas. And again, as I mentioned earlier, many of those items that are in Resolution 11 from USAHA are definitely in our list of items that are either bug fixes or enhancements. I think most of those are basically enhancements. And so as we move forward with this contractor and we get into that enhancement correction phase, we'll be out asking for more clarification on some of those bugs. I know some of the states have been really good at supplying this information as to what they need, and I think we're going to just do a little bit more follow-up so that we make sure the solutions that are implemented in VSPS actually meet the needs of those states that have identified those problems. And the other thing that kind of ties all this together is the phase 2 of MIB-modernization, which I mentioned was the web application, is also going to have a ICVI or ECVI component to it, unlike today where MIM does not touch ECVIs. And so our thought on that is that the new web interface, which we hopefully can design in a very user-friendly way, will actually work with VSPS in the back end. So that will, VSPS will still remain the system of record for our CVI work, and all the data that either comes from or goes out of VSPS can actually be then go through this interface. So we're looking at just trying to streamline everything. And again, with this being having the capabilities of working offline, potentially you can take a device out into the field using this new MIM component that's web-based and create an iCVI that would then move up into VSPS and then be distributed to other states as needed through the MIM messaging service. So a lot of this is, separate, but it's all going to tie together as we get done. And I think that's what I had for IT updates. So now, Aaron, back to you.
I think that's all we have for today, and certainly a lot of material and a lot of new information and activities going on here. Thanks a bunch, Randy and Alex, for the updates, and I guess I would open it up for anyone for any kind of questions for any of us on the presentation. I believe you have to do a *6. I think we're all muted.
Hello, this is Bob Cobb in Georgia. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Hey, that was a very good presentation. Thank you very much. I am still confused around the retirement or the phasing out of the metal visual tags. Let me just ask a couple of questions, and then maybe you can easily answer my questions. When we talk about the metal visual tags, we're talking about all news tags, correct? This would not simply be the cattle tag that's used, but this would be the swine tag, this would be the scrapie tag, this would be all of that. Is that correct or not?
There have been a lot of discussions on the swine and the scrapie. What this one is talking about, phasing them out for cattle, and I don't know what decisions or what's going to happen with the swine and the scrapie tags. I don't know at this time.
Okay, and then about when you do phase them out, you made a comment that they would still be out there on the market for 8 or 9 cents or something to that effect. In order for one of these metal tags or any tag to be an official ID, it has to have the U.S. shield on it. So when you phase out the cattle metal tags, are you going to no longer make available to any metal tag manufacturers the U.S. shield?
For the near term, they would still be able to produce those and sell them. There's been some discussion at some point in the future, and I don't know when that was. I know one of the, I think it was NIAA a year ago, they had, as I remember, some folks, I think you were there too, some folks stood up and said, well, let's completely phase out visual tags by 2023. And right. We do not have a date set for eliminating them as official tags. The only thing on the table today is not providing them free anymore.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Well, that answers my question. Thank you much.
Randy, we have one comment on the chat window asking if you would elaborate a bit on some of the possible enhancements for VSPS, and will it possibly include small animals CVIs?
There's over 100 bugs and enhancements. So no, I'd be happy to work privately or offline with somebody if you really have some, specific ones you'd like me to elaborate on, but I don't think the whole group wants me to go through some of these. No, as far as small animal, at this point in time, VSPS what we have in place for these bug fixes and enhancements are limited to requests that were made probably prior to about May or June of this year. And so if a new request were to come in to say we want to expand this into small animal and cover all other species, like was in the resolution, where it says everything that's covered in the ECVI XML schema that's been approved, that's going to take a whole nother separate contract. That's a total rework, probably maybe even a whole nother different module, or at least total rebuild of the existing model. I'm not saying that it can't be done or it won't be done or it won't be entertained, or maybe it's something that could even be included in the the MIM part when we roll out the ability to have the ECVI on the web-based platform. Possibly that's the time we could throw it in. It could be maybe part of that. We have not had those discussions. I'm just speaking from my own what possibly could happen. But as of right now, and on this one-year contract we have for VSPS, the small animal side of things is not included in that.
Yeah, I see another one on the chat from Rebecca. Do we know when in 2019 USDA will stop providing news tags for free? Rebecca, I don't know. We have talked about sooner rather than later versus a number of different things. We may stop that as early as the end of this year. The one concern that I have is that if we stop providing free news tags, I would like to have the potential to implement a cost share, so that if you have been used to using the metal tags for whatever you would be using them for, whatever federally regulated activity, that we would have an option for a much lower cost electronic ID. So I don't know a date. There's not one set yet. We're thinking probably the end of this year, but we haven't set a date yet.
And Aaron, when you talk about the end of this year, you're talking about the end of 2018?
Was that Cindy?
Yes.
Yes. We're talking about the end of the calendar year. And once again, a date's not set, so I don't know that for sure yet, but that's one of the dates that's on the table. What I'm thinking we will probably do is set a date, make that decision as a final, and then have a transition period where states would still have a partial year supply of the no-cost metal tags. So that might be something like a decision made December 31st, and then that we would continue a half year's inventory of the tags that we would provide at no cost. But again, there's no decision yet on that. It's dangerous to be transparent and tell folks what you're thinking, but on the other hand, it's I think a better way to do business so that we all know what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Let's see, a question, Teresa. Question is, does the phase out of free noose tags include the metal orange brucellosis vaccination tags as well? And the answer is yes.
Aaron, I have one other comment. Read, it is important to get a phase-out date ASAP so that we can inform our producers.
I understand and agree.
Dr. Scott, Dave Hekimovich, Washington State.
Hi, how are you?
Just fine. You've given us several good scenarios about the phase-out of the tags, but has USDA moved forward? There was also some discussion previously on USDA collectively going out and getting RFPs for an AIN tag and those costs. And those costs may be less than what states have contracted with tag manufacturers individually. So I was wondering if you're looking into that as well.
Yeah, we are. As far as the tags, this would be what I had talked about as far as a cost share, and what we think is that we can negotiate with the tag companies for whatever we have as an official tag for a bulk pricing, and then be able to have those at a best quantity price, as well as splitting the cost between the producer and the state and the USDA. As I said, I don't have answers for that yet. I don't have details. I've been working with folks internally, and I have there should be a request coming out to you all in the states to join me sometime in the very near future to figure out how we can do that. I've talked to some of the tag companies and informally, and have some ideas from them on how we may be able to make that work. But I guess the bottom line is I don't have the answers, but all of us together I think can figure out a way to make it most effective to advance electronic ID and address the cost issue, at least to the degree that it can be addressed. It still costs money, but certainly there are ways we can work on that. So more answers, and Dave, we can talk more later on.
Thank you.
Dr. Scott, this is Rod Hall in Oklahoma. Just had a question on the distribution of the noose tags. When you all cease making them available free of charge, will, for instance, a livestock market veterinarian that utilizes a lot of those tags and maybe the market decides they aren't ready to go to an electronic tag at that time, will that market veterinarian need to just call the company that manufactures those tags and order them, or will they need to get approval from USDA to order a certain series of tags? Do you have any idea how that will work?
I don't have details yet, Rod, and I think it's going to vary too with you all, with the states, of what your decisions are. As far as phasing out the tags, we would have that transition period of doing that, and then those tags are available, and whether they would go through your office or whether they would be available directly to the market veterinarian, I don't know the answer. Another one we need to work out. Okay,
and also on the tags that you all are working on to do the cost share on, has a decision been made on if those are going to be low frequency or ultra high frequency? I looked at some tags at USAHA that I was told they're a UHF tag, and approximately 3.5 inches long by an inch wide, and I was told that in bulk they could be as low as $1.10 each. So, are you all gonna try to do cost share with either type of tag, or are you gonna limit it to one certain type, or?
Well, a couple of things there. We would support either technology, so either low frequency or high frequency.
Okay.
I know the tags you're talking about. I saw those too, and they're, in fact, I have one of them laying on my desk here right now. And those are appealing. Those are not approved official tags yet.
Right.
So one of the key issues is to be able to get new devices tested and approved. We want to make sure that they're quality tags and they'll hold up and do what we need them to do out there.
Right.
To get those on the market as quickly as we can. So two answers there.
Okay. So you will try to figure out a way to do cost share on either technology that particular producer wants to use. So.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
So last call for questions, *6, or send Daisy a chat message. And if no other questions, then Daisy, I think we're probably about finished, but we'll give folks just another minute or two to think of any questions.
There we go. Hi, this is Dee with Iowa. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, that was Dee.
Yes, it's Dee. I just had a question. When you're doing the request for proposals for these RFID tags, is it possible that along with the RFID tags we're going to need WAN readers? Is it something where we could get the companies to, if we purchase so many tags, throw in a WAN reader or give it a WAN reader at a discounted rate?
That's a good thought, and I hadn't thought of it before. Certainly would be a question for them when we talk. And I think probably a lot of these kind of questions and ideas and thoughts may come up when we put our heads together to work through some of the details. So I'm sorry I don't have an answer for you, but I think it's a really good idea and certainly one to flesh out a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
And it doesn't appear that we have any additional questions in the chat room. So if we're all set and no one has any other questions, I think we can end it here.
Okay, well, big thank you to everyone, and especially Alex and Randy and Daisy for getting us all set up here and running. So thanks very much to everyone.
Okay, thank you.